I just found out the reason my parents divorced. My parents have been divorced since I can remember. I'm now 21 years old and have been living with my mother for most of my life. I never had weekends or holidays with dad, as some kids with divorced parents have. My mother was basically my sole caretaker, while my dad visited me and took me out to eat sometimes. As I grew older and got a phone, my dad definitely took the time to call me and message me multiple times a day, which I guess created a false sense of closeness, because I never really did spend much time with him. To put it in context, I had only ever visited his home once, and that was the cataclysmic event that kickstarted the divorce. This happened when I was about 2 or 3 years old and is a memory that I remembered recently. My mom had never once spoken bad about my dad or talked about the reason they divorced, and I guess I just never asked. I struggle with depression and anxiety and usually try not to think about my problems in order to function as well as I can. Maybe I should have. From the moment I turned 18 years old, my dad started to want to introduce me to his side of the family that I have never met before. I was unsure and uncomfortable, so I talked to my mom about it. My mother then, for the first time, explained that she and his side of the family didn't get along because they hated her for no apparent reason. She confessed that she didn't want me to meet them because she was afraid that they'd treat me bad or make me obligated to them in a weird family way. It was a long talk, and at the end I decided that I didn't have a reason to meet them and that my life would continue just fine without this new family addition. Slowly, however, my dad convinced me to meet my cousins and then his sister and his wife and her two daughters. This is where I should have talked to my mom again. I've known his wife for about 2 years now, but we've met about 4 or 5 times. All this time, I've been referring to her as his girlfriend, because that's what I thought she was. This September, I had to go to the hospital due to an infection, and my dad came with me. That's when he told me that she's actually his wife. He said it in such a casual way, and I was so sick that I didn't really have the mental capacity to deal with that information right then and there. I let him know it made me sad he hadn't included me in such an important part of his life, and his response was that it happened in 2012 when I was 10 and that he didn't really consider marrying with just the papers and not in a church. A real marriage. The reason I hadn't told my mom about his wife for so long was that I thought she was his girlfriend that he had for a short amount of time and therefore didn't think it important to upset my mom. 1 month later, my mom had to get some documents sorted, and that's when she found out he was married. She called him to ask and told him to tell me because it would hurt me not to know. He lied at first, then said the same stuff he told me, didn't tell her I knew, and then started saying some not so nice stuff to her. After this phone call, he called me and asked me if he had ever told me, as if he forgot. But I knew it was some weird way to include me in his lie and told me my mom called him and had found out. I tried to ignore this whole thing had ever happened, because in a way I've never felt part of my dad's life, so I wasn't surprised. I got invited, however, to his wife's daughter's wedding in July, and that was definitely something I needed to tell my mom. So I told her yesterday, and now I feel like my heart is crumbling. My mom broke down and told me that they divorced due to my dad cheating and living a double life, with a second phone and home and everything, all with his now wife. My mom had found out from me as a kid, telling her about his other house and this other lady. My mom hasn't really figured it out, but he was basically manipulating and gaslighting her their whole relationship and marriage, while also financially abusing her and making her fund his life and making her go in debt. When they divorced, she was so in debt she was working 14 hours every day. I remember as a kid she was working all the time, and I raised myself to be as independent emotionally as I can be. Now I find out her life and Mount childhood became so messed up because of him. To this day, she has never wanted to date anyone else, and her trust on men has been so destroyed. She's lonely and insecure, and for 20 years had to put up with him because she didn't want me to have a bad image of him in my mind. I feel so guilty for not telling her before, and so sad for how he treated her and that he probably doesn't even love me all that much. I have to tell him to cancel my ticket for the wedding now, and it's stressing me out. I want to lay in my bed and rot for now. I don't know how to process this, and I guess I never thought I'd have to doubt him and his role in my life.